Hello, Michigan music lovers. This is Scott Baker, musician, music journalist, and producer, welcoming you to the Michigan Music History Podcast, covering all the territories of the Mitten. We cast from around the block of the brand new Michigan Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Bay City, Michigan, in the heart of the Great Lakes Bay region. And I'm joined by Michigan music royalty, sitting to the left and right, Dr. J. Gary Johnson of the Michigan Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and MichiganRockandRollLegends.com website, and Sir Fred Reif, Michigan music author, publisher, manager, and musician. Together they have taught, lectured, traveled, hosted, and have been quoted worldwide on all things Michigan music. Chances are you stood next to them at the record store or shoulder to shoulder at concerts over the years. They are the record crate diggers and the library microfishermen that have dug around for the details, the credits, and the lineage that has been part of the backstory of Michigan music. So grab your favorite beverage, hit the cruise, and take a trip back with us as we open up a can of earworms on Michigan's rich music history.
Welcome to the Michigan Music History Podcast Show, channeling through all styles and eras of Michigan music, from before you were born up through this very minute. And now, your host, Scott Baker.
Hey, we are here. Studio 163 in Essexville, and we got a guest tonight, too. A little surprise for y'all. He's not going to be on camera, but hey, we're still in the podcast room, rocking it out here at Alan Garcia's The Michigan Music History Podcast Show with Dr. J and Sir Fred. How's it going, Dr. J?
Going great, Scott.
Going real good.
Fred, hey, hearing from you early tonight. He must have took his vitamins today. He's going to get all pumped up. Good. That's a good sign. All right, he's raring to go. We got a special guest in the house, Mr. Gary Asel. How are you doing, Gary?
I'm doing well, Scott.
He's my dad, my other dad. I should say I grew up with him, and he's got knowledge like these cats, and I go to him quite a bit when it comes time for some Michigan music info and other bands as well. I mean, if I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him, it's safe to say. So, anyway, tonight we're going to have our focus on the great Michigan venues that some of you guys have gone to, some of the people that have put comments up on our sites, as well as the venues, the dances. They say there were dances back then, but you know, it was a rock show. That's pretty cool. Clubs, anything that was turned into an upside down place to get into, you know, then became the Daniels Dens and all the bigger venues throughout the years. But that was definitely the big memory thing for everybody, I think, off the very first podcast was all the great places. And hopefully we can get to some more around the state and outside of our mid-Michigan area. We're based, as I say in every episode, here in mid-Michigan and the Great Lakes Bay region, or the Tri-Cities, which is out of Bay City, which we have a lot of Saginaw Midland ties. We go up to the Thumb, or we'll go just a little bit north, but Fred was in Ann Arbor for quite a bit, so Fred carries a lot of weight from down south, especially in the blues scene. When Dr. J with his Hall of Fame, he's bringing it from all around the states. But we would still love to hear from you guys up there in the UP, over on the west side of the state. And then there's guys asking already, you know, what was over there. So hopefully we can tune into some memories tonight, maybe from some of those places as well. If not, we're going to have another one of these podcasts down the road.
Yes, indeed.
So, we had quite the batch of venues here in Bay City. There was the roller rink out, right?
Yeah, Roll Air.
Roll Air.
Roll
Okay.
Air.
See, I'm the one that missed all this. I'm hoping to see video footage someday of someone. But you know, I think the cool thing, and I gathered this after the first two episodes, is you guys went there just to have fun. You didn't think it was, oh, the great bands were there. The great bands were already there. They didn't become great until long after, or they were a legend. So the legend didn't really begin till so far later that you couldn't look back and say, well, we went because of that. You went because you were chasing girls, you were out listening to music, whatever it was. There was always a different reason. So not a lot of footage, not a lot of audio, not a lot of anything but the memories. So, Gary, you were there. I mean, you...
Yeah, and all it was chasing the crowd. Chasing the gang, chasing the girls. You know, we went to Roll Air every Tuesday night, all summer long. There'd be sometimes, depending on the band, there'd be a couple thousand people there.
Yeah, 2,000.
Sure. Yeah, it was pretty amazing. The Battle of the Bands was okay. There was usually 2 or 3 local little bands, things like that. But everybody was waiting for. They even built a new, bigger stage in the middle, surrounded by brick and everything. And I think that only lasted 2 years, and then that whole scene blew up and ended really quickly.
Really?
But I don't know what happened. Just I think the crowds got a little out of hand, and there was trouble a few nights.
Not too much, though.
No, not very much. A couple of brawls, but that did really put the brakes on that whole scene.
Well, I think when the drug scene started too, it was real easy to keep alcohol out, but pills.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Marijuana and so on. Of course, I think a lot of people that were guarding the gates were pretty unfamiliar with marijuana.
Right.
So
I smoked my first joint in the parking lot at the Royal Air Rink in the back seat of Tim Burke's 1962 Chevy Impala.
There we go.
I think that was a Frost show, to be honest with you.
The Frost. Ooh. 60. What year would that be?
68, probably.
So,
69,
there you go.
If I was riding in the back of Tim's car, I wasn't driving yet, so I was 15. So 1968.
Yeah, they had some pretty big shows there. I think they called them Super Tuesdays.
Yes.
And that's when you started to get the bigger Detroit area bands coming.
Sure.
The Rationals played there,
Saw
the
the Rationals.
Frost,
Yep.
SRC.
Yep.
I think the MC5.
Alice Cooper.
So I saw the MC5 there. Everybody was just waiting them to drop the big MF bomb, because it said it on the album, man. It was even in print on the album. They didn't say it live. They don't think they wanted to get thrown in jail.
Oh, yeah, they had police.
Yeah, it was Kick Out the Jams, Brothers and Sisters is what they changed it to.
They got hippie on you all of a sudden.
Well, in order to get it on the radio.
Yeah, to get it on the radio, exactly.
It was, made the Hot 100.
Oh, sure.
It was the album that was the big hit, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no doubt.
So they had a single that had the edit?
Yeah, Kick Out the Jams. They
Brothers
added
and
the
Sisters.
vocal. Yeah, it was Kick Out the Jams, Brothers and Sisters.
Well, the later albums, they fixed it, too.
Well, Elektra did that without permission of the band, and that caused a big hassle, which actually ended up with the MC5 leaving Elektra. They got into a big thing with Hudson's, too.
Yes.
They put that ad in the Fifth Estate because Hudson's wasn't going to carry the album because actually some clerks were getting hassled by the police for selling obscene material. And so Hudson's decided not to carry the album, and the MC5, being the rebels that they were, they took out an ad in the Fifth Estate that said, "Fuck Hudson's." But what really got him in trouble was they put the Elektra logo
on it. Yes.
And so Hudson's was telling Elektra, "We aren't carrying any Elektra
of your
albums."
product.
I mean, you're talking the Doors.
Took the Doors off their shelf.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so they got into real hot water with Jack Holtzman, who was the head man at Elektra Records. And from that point on, the relationship was pretty much ruptured.
Was this pre-Sinclair or during Sinclair?
Well, Sinclair was managing the band at that point.
Okay. And so they were the Black Panther thing and all that power was going on.
White Panther.
White Panther.
Yes.
The White Panther Party.
Yep.
And they were the, I'm trying to think here, was it the cultural wing?
Yes.
Or Fred, you might
think
remember
so,
that.
Yeah.
And then they had this manifesto, and it really was pretty controversial at the time. I think it hurt the MC5 in a big way.
Oh, sure it did.
Because, they got lumped as kind of like radicals, but they weren't really radicals. And so when they would play shows, some of these really hardcore people, there was this one group on the East Coast called the Motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, these guys were like anarchists.
Oh, sure. They had SDS would show up at all their anywhere they were playing. They had real problems with that. They were followed by the wrong.
And then they got all this negative press, and it all got, lost what a good band they were. I mean, even I'm trying to think, the last time I saw them, they headlined, and it was like everybody was standing there waiting for them to do something controversial.
Right.
They weren't even paying any attention. It was just, what are they going to do?
It was about the hype over the music.
Yeah, and then the music gets lost in the shuffle.
Right.
So, because, geez, they made some pretty good albums.
Oh, sure
that second album that came out on, what was it? Was it Atlantic, wasn't it?
I don't remember. And I just
Back
read
in the
their
USA.
guitar player's book too.
Wayne Kramer's
book.
Yeah. Really, it was a pretty good album. It was very different from Kick Out the Jams.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it was actually produced by the guy who ended up being Bruce Springsteen's producer.
Yeah, that second album had a little finesse to it.
Yeah.
Which the other one had no finesse at all. It was all balls.
Big raw and,
Yeah.
very, very raw. And then my favorite MC5 album was actually the last one.
Is it really?
High Time.
Yeah.
That's where Fred Smith really stepped up.
Yeah.
And I thought, boy, that was just a dynamite album, and it just got completely lost in the shuffle.
Gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I've heard it more than a half dozen times, to be honest with
go
you.
back to that one.
I
It's
will.
pretty interesting. It's a good listen.
Coming to the Sonic Rendezvous in the late 70s and early 80s.
What an outstanding band that was that never went anywhere either.
Fantastic. Like Muscle.
I think,
It was-
that was still some MC5 hangover, because you look at it, that's a super group.
Yeah, totally. I bet it is.
Scott
Scott Morgan.
you got Fred Smith,
Gary
Rasmussen,
Rasmussen.
and was it
Drummer
Scott
from-
Ashton
The drummer
From the Stooges, yeah.
Jeez. And they were terrific.
No doubt.
That band should have been tremendous. And they sounded, anything that people put out there, great.
There's a lot of kind of live stuff that's been bootlegged, and they only recorded like one single, and that was it. Nothing, no album. It's
crazy.
like that. Yeah. Wow.
Smith had a lot, though. I mean, you could.
Oh, he was great.
It was. They look back at MC5 now, and there's a little more on the wall on him. Even though Wayne's still, available to do and talk and everything, but I think Fred really came to the forefront after his passing, because people knew they were, you're never going to hear that again.
Right.
That's over. That era's over. And then Tyner, he passed as well.
Yeah, I think Patti Smith actually had a lot to do with releasing all these things that were recorded at, sometimes Ann Arbor clubs. And live
Or the
cuts.
Grandee or something. Yeah.
Well, Gary's been putting up. I'm friends with him on Facebook. He posts little links to like the open free download pages. You can get the entire box set that was released, everything. He's like, hey, every so often he'll shoot out a link.
Wow.
Here, you can still find it. Download it now, while it's still out there. Because it's like the Grateful Dead. There's these archives, archive.com.
Sure.
And he's helping keeping the music alive with it, so it's pretty cool. And he's being a chef right now, too, which, I mean, every other day he's putting out just chef-free food. I said, you got to have your own food show, man. He says, I would love to. Hook me up, man.
Yeah.
But, hey, that's... Yeah. So the MC5 came up to Bay City or wherever around.
I saw the MC5 play at Roll Air. I saw the MC5 play out in Caseville at the Lakeland Castle. And I saw them play at the, what was it, in Houghton Lake? Music Box?
Yeah, Music Box.
At the Music Box in Houghton Lake. I saw them at all three of those venues. Roll Air twice. But the
What
other
about
ones
the
one time.
Delta
Oh,
College?
that's right, the Delta Music Festival. I did see them there, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the power went out when Amboy Dukes were on stage, and they just continued to do this strange rhythm chant until they got the power back on. I don't think Delta College knew what hit them.
Wow. Was that 70? 71?
Probably
70.
Late 70.
Yeah.
It would have been beginning of my senior year in high school.
Wow.
But that was every Michigan band was there. That was an amazing Michigan lineup because Seeger was there, the Dukes were there, SRC
Iggy
was there, Iggy was there. That was an amazing lineup.
Yeah,
I see.
They did a number of those. I saw that same kind of show at the Saginaw Auditorium.
Okay.
That had, the MC5 headline, but the Amboy Dukes were there, SRC, the Frost, Bob Seger System, all the heavy hitters.
Saginaw
Yeah,
Auditorium.
for
One after another.
Yeah, and the neat thing at Delta is they had two stages, one at each end of the gym. And one would be getting ready while the other was playing, and bang, the music could go off for 5 minutes, and they'd turn right around, and everybody just everybody just spin 180 and they'd start playing at the other end.
I was talking to my friend Mick Brown today, another guy I've talked to like Gary. He's really knowledgeable. I called him today because he couldn't make the show. I was trying to get him in on tonight too, and he says the Lakeland Castle roller rink, he said that was a band at each end.
Yes,
there.
they had a band at each
So
end.
they did the same thing there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm like, that's fantastic. They need to do that more often. I mean, not just...
And Lakeland Castle was another one that just the scene blew it up. Just the heavy drug culture came in, and of course, I don't know if you remember May of 1972 in Caseville, when the hippies took the whole city over.
No.
We were camping at Sleeper State Park, and I felt so sorry for the families that were camping. It was Memorial Day weekend of 1972, and people were scrambling by Saturday. Families were pulling up and leaving because everybody came into town, and the Lakeland Castle was done. It was no more.
Oh,
And
wow.
I don't think they ever had another show after that, but the hippies blew it up. It was pretty
Dang.
crazy.
Yeah.
It really was.
That and also the Delta, what was the Delta thing called?
Delta Pop Festival.
Yes.
When they did it annually?
No, just one.
Just
Yeah.
Okay. But then they had shows after that, like you guys
Oh,
were saying,
yeah,
right?
they
Because
had-
I know Cooper was there at one point. Kiss was there at one point.
Yeah, I saw Kiss there when they were just starting out.
Yeah.
You know, they just had the small pyrotechnics. But they had some pretty good acts at Delta. Gee, who else is Ravi Shankar was there.
He came to Delta College?
Yes.
Paul Butterfield Blues Band.
I saw
yeah.
that one. I saw that one.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Some really outstanding talent there. I saw Terry Knight and Pack there.
Mitch Ryder.
They
the
played
Detroit
during
Wheels.
the day. You know, when I was, we were students there. Came in the gym. Oh, it's Terry Knight and Pack. And that's when Mark Farner and Don Brewer were still both in the band.
That's a road I'd like to go down with you sometime too. Is the Terry Knight and the Pack?
Oh, yeah.
Into the Pack, into Grand Funk. The first version of "Let Me Stand Next to Your Fire" that I heard was not Jimi Hendrix's. It was the Pack's.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay.
just here it was. I hadn't heard
That's
Hendrix
fantastic.
yet. And the Pack released their cover of it so fast, right behind Hendrix's version, that the first one I heard.
Well,
was the
Hendrix
Pack.
didn't release it as a single.
You're right.
So
You just
had to
didn't
listen
hear
to
it
the
until
album.
you heard the album.
Yeah,
exactly.
you had to buy the album.
Yeah, the same thing with "I'm So Glad." I heard SRC's version before I ever heard Cream's version.
Cream. Okay.
That's crazy. I just hung up the phone with Mick before I came here, and he says, someday I'd like to go over the Pack with you guys. He just said the same thing. He said, and I said, I'll ask the guys tonight, because he says, if you can get Farner on a show or something, I'm like, well, we can ask him. But he says his memory was In the Jungle, the Mighty Jungle. Yeah. He says it was post Terry Knight and the Pack,
Right.
pre Grand
Grand
Funk,
Funk.
and he says that version was just mind blowing. And he says, I want to make sure that my memory's correct on that.
Well, Farner was just like the lead singer, not playing guitar.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
at least in one version of the, well, they were called either the Pack
Or the Fabulous Pack. That's what Mick said.
Fabulous.
Mick said
Yeah.
he couldn't remember if it was Fabulous or...
Well, they used both names.
Both
I
names.
think.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
But they recorded some pretty good stuff. Dick
Oh, yeah.
Wagner wrote a great song for him, Wide Tracking. That
Really?
was,
that's a Dick tune.
Right.
well, and the whole deal was they were going to try to, because Pontiac had just come out with the wide track,
yeah.
and they were trying to work it into a national campaign. But I'm not sure. Maybe it was because they were with that Lucky 11 label out of Flint that they didn't have enough, power or whatever,
yeah.
to really get it into
Sure.
General Motors or something like that. But it was a pretty valiant effort, You had Dick Wagner. Dick Wagner actually wrote and produced a couple songs for him.
I'll be darned. Because Farner and Dick had a past, right? What didn't Farner spend a little bit of time in the Bossman?
Bossman.
That's what I thought.
And he not only he sang on Baby Boy most famously,
Right.
but also he was on Rainy Day. First, well, it was the first Frost song where Dick Wagner got into using strings.
Right. Yep.
And so I guess Farnham was on that too,
I'll be darned.
according to Dick in his book.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Mark and him, Mark would come to the studio every so often, and they'd talk about that, like, just the past and all the stuff they tied together. But everything you said that is in my memory back,
Well,
too.
supposedly Dick helped him write Heartbreaker.
Really?
That was kind of composed when he was still in the Bossman.
We'll have to ask him that if we get his
I think,
opportunity.
if I remember correctly, that's the situation.
Yeah, I'll be darned.
Because he's also on that new Detroit Alice Cooper album that we're going to be talking about in a podcast
That's
or
a
two.
pretty good album, I will have to say.
That's it's so full of all stars, and
Yeah.
it's just got a great sound. But yeah, I was hoping maybe we can get a talk with him. I'm gonna see what I can do.
I went down to the Fillmore and actually sold merch at the last Dick Wagner Memorial Show, just because somebody I knew was involved and da-da-da-da-da. They had, you want to come down? Free show, sell some merch and whatever. And Farner was there. Farner performed actually a pretty long set for about an hour.
Is that the one that Susie Quattro showed up at?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
I missed that one. I was at the
was-
first one though.
That was a lot of fun.
I'll betcha.
Plus, while I was standing there selling shirts, actually I had my back turned to the counter and was grabbing a shirt for somebody, and I heard a voice that I hadn't heard in probably 30 years. It was my college roommate.
No.
Was standing there buying a shirt. And I knew the voice before I even turned around.
That's cool.
And it was, what the hell are you doing here? One of those. Yeah, it was
Whoa.
pretty neat.
Magical.
Yeah.
When I went to that first one, there was so full of all stars at the first Wagner.
Yeah, the first one would have been.
And my
nice
buddy
to see.
Sean and I are hanging out, and we're just like, this is incredible. All these people coming in and out all night long playing. And then somebody said, Jack Douglas is down on the floor, and he's like the producer, that him and Bob Ezrin were,
Right.
he got Bob Ezrin into it, which became Wagner's mystery.
Right.
And I'm like, no way. And then we said something to somebody in passing. He's like, oh, he's right over there. And so when they had one of the breaks, we headed down, and he was like, somebody actually knows who I am. He was just so thrilled. We took selfies with him. We're like, Jack Douglas is here, man. All the old Aerosmith albums, all that stuff, man. This guy did it all,
Well, probably nobody has ever seen a picture of him.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So always behind the scenes.
It was too cool. I don't think Bob Ezrin showed up to any of those, but he's also super busy still. So he's still quite.
Yeah, he's still pretty active.
Yeah. But yeah, that's crazy. What are some of your concert memories, Fred? Do you have anything that we haven't spoken of that you brought, that you got some memories to bring to the table?
Well, most of mine were at Daniel's Den in Saginaw. I would go there every weekend. I forget if it was on a Friday. Well, they were on Friday and Saturday. Mm-hmm. But in Saginaw, they had also the Y dances.
Yeah.
And those were on Saturday.
Speaking of Friday and Saturday, and I hate to interrupt you, but you guys said that the Rural Air Rink was just Tuesdays?
Tuesday night.
Even the Battle of the Bands? Was that just Tuesdays? So there was no off night to them?
No.
I wanted to clarify that earlier because I'm like, what a weird night of the week.
Just it did. I was thinking about that earlier too. Those Michigan bands. That's how cool it was for them. They didn't have to wait for the weekend to find a show because Houghton Lake was Thursday nights up at the Music Box. So you could play Tuesday in Saginaw, run up to Houghton Lake and play on Thursday. Come back into Saginaw and play Saturday night at Daniel's Den. The bands were busy, and that's how they got so good too. Though I think it's because they were working all the time.
Well, there were a lot of venues, a lot of places to play. And
Sure.
We mentioned that last week as one of the things with young bands today is you don't have any venues to play in.
Oh,
And these were all teen dances.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the thing that blew my mind. You guys were saying these are called dances back then. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Well, did you look at Bo White's book yet?
I haven't had an opportunity
Okay,
yet,
because Bo talks about it pretty well. About how that was a teen. It started out as a teen club, and people paid dues to belong to the teen club. Well, then when the Michigan rock and roll scene really started to take off, I don't think there was enough audience members out of that teen club.
Right.
That concept,
to make it pay.
that concept didn't work.
Yeah.
They thought, apparently there were still some keys around, from Daniel's. And in fact, what was that display? Was that in,
Well, Bo White had a picture of it.
he had
I think
a
did
picture
he
of the,
put it in his book?
a key,
He may
one of the
have-
keys?
yeah, I'm sure it was in
Because he
there,
had the key and the card.
Right.
Wow, yeah.
Remember
I think
card?
there was a picture of both in his book.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
'Cause I know there
It's-
was at the beginning.
It's a very interesting book. He does a good job, and he talks about all the. That was another thing that had a lot to do with it. Every radio station had their own top 10 list. You know, so if you listen, Dick Fabian's top 10, and I can't remember all the other DJs' names. Yeah, Ken Clark,
Don Andrews,
Boogie Bryan on WTAC, but they all had their own, and so everybody was pushing a little bit different thing. It was pretty neat.
It gives you a reason to tune in too.
Yeah, and plus they would play some local bands on the radio. If you made a 45 and you were appearing at a show that one of the DJs was hosting, you could get a little airtime for your 45. That's pretty cool.
That's cool.
Right. Have you ever listened to the Q100 out of Grayling? 100.3 out of Grayling. Actually, they bought 2 more stations too. They're 100.3 out of Grayling, 94.5 out of Mackinac City, and 106.3 out of Traverse City, I think.
Did Larry McRae have a show on it?
Larry McRae has a show on Sundays and Tuesdays
he still does?
on that program. Yes, he still does. But they do a Thursday night Michigan program, Michigan only, and it's a gal host. I can't remember her name. She does an awesome job. She really does.
Now, this is an FM station?
Yeah, it's an FM station.
And it carries all the way here? Usually they don't have...
No, you can stream it here.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it's Q100-FM, I think, is what their site is. They're an awesome station. The guy that owns the station, JC, is also their afternoon jock, 3 till 8, and he's one of the only people I know that's as knowledgeable as you, as far as his broad knowledge of every kind of music. And there's, I sent him a text once saying, "I love your ineptitude on the controls combined with your knowledge, because you get a lot of and dead air. All of a sudden it shuts off and it comes back on, but he knows so much." Makes it okay to listen to, but they do it.
He needs an engineer.
He does, and I think he's engineer, bottle washer,
probably,
and everything else. But they're large. They're all over northern Michigan and the eastern UP.
Erica Blair does that show, and she plays my stuff on there too.
I've heard your stuff on there more than once.
Cool. She actually likes the one that Larry's on. She's like, because she loves Larry's show, and Larry, there's always talking about Larry. But that song that we did on my couple of albums back, Reality, I'm always like, "Oh, thank you."
Yeah, well, that's great. So as she plays current artists as well as, it's not just the past.
Yes, new and old, both.
Oh, that's great.
She combines it well.
Yeah, because there's so few outlets, I know it. At least on radio programs, it seems like.
Yeah, I've had a couple back and forth with her because I sent her Jonathan's stuff.
Cool.
My grandson's band, and just sent it to her, and she says, "Oh yeah, we'll get them on. I'll let you know."
Awesome.
I haven't heard from her yet, but she's going to get them on because they finally got a few things out there streaming.
Well, good.
So we need more radio stations like that, more places like Daniel's Den, like you were talking about, Fred.
Well, during the week, like Tuesday was at the Roll-R ring. Wednesdays in Saginaw, they had the Elks dance.
Yeah, never went there. No, never went there.
Well, that was just records.
Okay.
No live bands. And I'm sure there was somewhere Thursday, what you said in...
Yeah, Houghton Lake was Thursday night, yeah.
Did you go to them ever, Fred?
No, I never... We played at the Daniel's Den grand opening up there. They had a lot of bands, and Question Mark and the Mysterians were the headliners.
Okay.
And they had folk groups upstairs and the rock bands downstairs. And just before we played, the Pleasure Seekers played upstairs.
Really?
I think Susie Quattro.
Her sisters or her cousins? Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
There were three Quattro sisters in the band, at least at one time.
Well, then we started to play, and we got probably 2 songs. And Question Mark and the Mysterians start playing downstairs. Everyone
took off.
ran downstairs, and we had no one. So we ended up quitting and going downstairs.
Going down and listening to Question Mark.
Well, this must have been 1967. So
sure.
What band were you in at the time, Fred?
The original low-class, half-ass jug and blues band.
Seriously, that was it.
Yeah.
That was the whole name. Wow. That's pretty cool, man. Do you guys got any recordings?
No. Oh. Never recorded.
Out of your massive archive, there's nothing about it.
I'm looking. I'm asking all the other guys in the band, and they said We never taped anything, so.
My buddy Mick Brown, who I talked to, as I said earlier, he says he used to play in a band up there during that time period called The Daze, D-A-Z-E, and they became The Illusion before The Illusion took over. And he says they would go to those shows, especially at like Lakeland Castle, and come to Bay City just to rip off the ideas of the covers. And what was that cover, SRC's cover of Cream that you were talking about?
I'm so glad.
Yeah, he says that they were like, that was way better. He's like, that's one we want to do. So they covered that version.
I prefer the
That's so
SRC
crazy.
version to the Cream version. I really do.
And then he said he'd take Bossman and Frost Records and just do the B-sides when their band would play out, and they'd go out and just. He says that's why I want to ask Farner about the Jungle, because we took their version of the Jungle and just.
Be darned.
Yeah. Do you ever hear The Days or the Illusion?
I remember seeing the name, and
That was
The
Mick.
name sounds familiar.
probably saw them, but
They were a thumb band, Bad Axe area.
we probably saw them out there. Then either at the castle or, and there was another. I think I sent you a note on that. There was a bar out there called Mother's.
You did, yeah. I mentioned that. Actually, that'll be in our next episode. I tagged it onto that. But yeah, Mick didn't have a memory of the Mothers. I didn't ask him, actually. But was that open long? Was that the...
Well, I don't remember. We had to, I know when I first started going there, we had to sneak in because it was a bar, and we weren't 21. But I looked.
He told me he remembers one called the Bat Cave. It was a brand by Ted LaFave, he thought. It was up in that way, Sebring area. And he says that was really short ran because it got into trouble quick for whatever reason. But he's like that. He says that. I asked him, I said, you had a little spot. I couldn't remember the Mothers at the time. He says, well, there was the Bat Cave. Ted LaFave, I think, did that. You guys mentioned him. I think you mentioned him in the first episode.
Yeah, Ted was a DJ. He did a lot of dances, mostly in the thumb area.
Okay.
I'd met him when, I'd mentioned this before. He was a member of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute.
That's how that came
at Saginaw Valley. And he gave me a few photographs. He had his little trailer that he would take to dances. He probably had his equipment on it and so on. So, yeah.
I know at Garber we had, what was his name from WXOX, the Big Ox, Walt Bauer, the DJ from there, used to do a lot of dances when I was in junior high at Garber.
Okay.
He was there often. And so was Dick Fabian, too.
Well, that was a big deal. Even at, I went to a real small parochial high school, St. Joseph High School in Bay City. And, we had Bob Dell there.
Sure.
Who was a big name on WTAC.
He was.
Top disc jockey for a while. Dick Fabian, Bob Dyer, both, spun. It was all records. Mm-hmm. In those days, nobody had a band with them. But yeah, they would come and play our high school dances. I mean, St. Joseph, I don't think we had.
Class D school.
Yeah, we probably had maybe 160 or 70 total kids in there. It was under 200 for sure.
Sure.
So that had to be exciting, and I even remember those days. You look at the DJ almost as a star too, a little bit, not quite as big as the rock star or the big musician you want to see on TV, but the DJs were huge back then.
They were.
Well, everybody listened to AM radio.
You still remember their names?
Oh, sure.
Uncle Don Andrews, Ken Clark, Dick Fabian.
That's a whole nother episode for us down the road is to bring in some radio cats, and that's something that we have nowadays. A lot of greatest hits channels is what they are, and they've been playing the same music since I've been little.
Oh, corporate radio. Yeah.
And now we have, and there's names that go along with them, but they're not the ones that spun the local 45s. There's a few like Erica, who they get the independent shows. There's one up in Harrisville. A buddy of mine runs one up there, and there's a few heading down Southway towards Dearborn.
Okay,
but it's few and far between, otherwise you're getting on a PBS or a Delta type channel, which is fine too,
right,
to get the music out. But there's nothing like it used to be where they get the Hot 45.
Well, and that only lasted a short time because more and more stations by the end of the decade in the 60s had adopted the national top 40.
Yes, and
soon as they did that really restricted the local disc jockeys from playing those little 45s.
So the corporates started creeping at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And by 1968, it would have been impossible for a record like 96 Tears to be a number one hit because it would have never got played on local radio, which, it kind of, that's a real interesting story of starting out on, WKNX and WSAM in, Bay City, Saginaw, Midland area, and then moving to WTAC, which had a bigger signal and reached Detroit.
Yep.
And then, it's WKNR and finally CKLW. And
it was literally groundswell.
Yeah. Do you remember Terry Knight on WTAC?
Sure.
I think it was Terry Knapp, though, at that time.
Yeah, I think you're right, Fred.
And Boogie Bryant, too, was another WTAC jock that we listened to a lot.
You know what we need to do is bring Bobby in here, because he would love to do this. And we're going to talk about, question mark. And,
oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
And we were going to talk about indigenous music for an episode you wanted to do. And he'd be perfect for getting him in here and bringing that whole story about to everybody. That's incredible. No, I wish we still had the, everybody's kind of go back to releasing singles, even though if it isn't on a 45 right now. The singles are a big thing because not everybody can sell records anymore. And even when they do, it's still not like it used to be at all. It's so far beyond because the record companies are in such disarray.
You could tour on a 45.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, because most of them, when they toured in a package, and so everybody only played a 20-minute set.
Oh, true.
You only had to play 5 songs.
It's still going. You guys said that there was the IMA thing going around. Who in the first episode?
Alan Freed. And we had mentioned that my friend Tom Cedarberg had filmed.
I saw that finally.
Yeah. That 1958 show, which turned out to be Buddy Holly's last appearance.
I
in
heard
Michigan.
that the last
and,
broadcast.
But also, it was an all-star cast of, one of the typical 50s rock and roll package shows.
Yeah, a little review kind of thing is what it was.
Right.
I saw Jimi Hendrix there.
Did you really?
Where at?
IMA.
Oh, at Flint? Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, first time I saw Bruce Springsteen was at the IMA.
Wow.
Dang.
I told a friend of mine who now lives in St. Louis, Missouri, Pete Bissonette, that I was doing this with you. And he says, my brother Rick and his brother-in-law Bob Morris swear they saw Jimi Hendrix at Roll Air. I said, nah. Yeah, I said, I've forgotten a lot of things that happened at Roll Air, but I know I'd remember that. I think they were stoned.
Well, we were talking about that drug influence at Roll Air. There we go. Exactly. There's a good example.
Yes, exactly.
I saw that ticket stub pop on Facebook recently that had Rush on that bill. So Rush played Bay City.
That was something that I'm glad you brought that up because that's something we needed to correct. That was not the Rush from Toronto that is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Was it Mahogany Rush?
No, this is a band from Flint, and of all people, their guitarist was Mark Farner's younger brother, Ricky.
No kidding.
Yeah, Ricky Farner. And he was in Christopher Englehart's book on Mark Farner from Grand Funk Grace.
Right. Sure.
And he talked. He said they had a band. They played for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years maybe. And he said he was making more money than his dad was working at General Motors.
I remember that in that Grace book.
Factory.
Farner's
and
book, yes.
There was also another Rush band. There were 2 in Michigan. Rush.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of those drug terms right there,
Imagine that.
Yeah, right. So there was another Rush band from Warren, Michigan. And so you see their name on festival posters, too.
Really?
Okay.
But again,
that's crazy.
that's not the Rush, I
posted that stub on Eric Asel, my buddy's page, and I'm like, Ace, I would have put it first tour with the original drummer. I mean, early on, because it was 70, and I'm like, that was right when they kind of did it. They must have just came here first, and where everybody was kind of oohing and on over that
Who's
stub.
That?
Rush.
You're talking about Rush?
Yeah, in Bay City.
Well, Neil
Neil
Peart didn't even join the band, I think, till, what was it,
Fly By Night, which is.
Right. And Rush has a pretty neat local connection anyway. You know how many tours that they rented the Saginaw Civic Center for like 2 weeks?
To rehearse
and put up their rig, practice their rig, timing their rig out, and then they would open their tour at the Civic Center.
I didn't know that.
Would be their first show.
I saw Rush at the Civic Center.
Yeah, I saw Rush at the Civic Center a couple times, but they would spend like 10 days there first because The gears were done. There was nothing going on at the Civic Center. Remember, it was an empty building for a long time, almost empty. But so there was a building that big that they could rent, use, get ready, time everything out, and go.
One of them last Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young tours would have been 2000, 2001, 2002. I was working at Wagner's in Saginaw with Dick, and we got word that they were in town because they were kicking off their tour at the Palace for that tour in Detroit. And I'm like, what are they saying they're in town for? Well, they rented out for a whole week and a half the Civic Center to rehearse their show.
Really?
And Nash was having dinner every night at that little place right down from our studio. And I'm like, I hear about this afterwards, down the line. You're like,
of course you do.
Really? I'm sure Neil had very little to do. He come in and do his parts, probably went back to the hotel or whatever. But, Crosby and Stills, who knows? But I heard Nash was having dinner every night at this one spot. And I'm like,
funny.
That is crazy. I mean, that's huge. That was at the end of the whole big era of the Blockbuster stuff,
Well, Wendler Arena, which, was the name of it back in those days, they had a pretty steady concert lineup coming to Saginaw.
Sure. Yeah.
Jeez, there were all kinds of great people there.
I was there at the grand opening with Ray Charles and Sonny Stitt.
Wow, really?
That was great.
Yeah, I saw a lot of good shows there.
Yeah, me too.
I remember not taking Eric. Eric was probably 10 or 12 years old at the time. We were going to see Jethro Tull, and the 3 or 4 shows I'd seen before that at the Civic Center, the main floor was just madness. It was always just a huge crush. They could never control the crowd and whatnot. Yeah, neither did I, but that's what we ended up buying was main floor tickets. And so I told Eric, I'm sorry, you can't go. We had like 10th row seats, and everybody sat like you swore it was a Pink Floyd show. Everybody was just leaning back. Eric was so mad when we told him.
I bet. Well, I wonder what that tour was. Would it have been 80?
It was the A
so
tour
80,
with Eddie Jobson.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. That's so cool. I remember when he finally started going to some shows with you, he'd come back with like the Triumph shirt and some shows, Genesis here, You really got to get him out at an early age. That was nice.
The best was, I think he was 12 when we took him to see Peter Gabriel in Detroit. We were at Joe Louis Arena, and we were in like the 15th row, and when Gabriel would go to play Lay Your Hands on Me was when he always laid back and fell into the audience. And he was getting near the end of the song and backing up to the front of the stage, and we're all standing on our chairs, Judy and I and Eric at 12 in between us, and Eric looks up at us and says, I'm out of here, and disappears into the crowd. Gone. You couldn't see him anymore. Everybody's up on their chairs. All of a sudden, when he falls into the crowd, you see this little bitty kid's hand come up and grab Peter Gabriel by the shoulder. Yeah,
that's one story I did not know.
Yeah, kind of a neat story. His mother was just beside herself.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord.
And I can't blame her.
Yeah.
But we're supposed to be talking about Michigan rock and roll.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right. It's all good.
We're Michigan venue.
Rationals.
Yeah.
Rationals. Man, I'm so glad you gave me that disc of Rationals tunes. That was the guy up north at the radio station. I asked him, have you ever heard the Rationals version of Respect?
I was just going to say, Mick said another thing he wanted to bring up was the Rationals version of Respect.
And did
I have it in my notes right here.
Did it predate Aretha's?
Yes.
I thought so. That's what I told the DJ up north.
That's what he said. He goes, it was before Aretha.
I said it. That's what I said to him. He said, I doubt that. And I said, well, boy, you better check.
Well, Jerry Wexler wanted to sign the Rationals to Atlantic.
Oh, no kidding.
And G. Pollan was their manager and the head of A Square Records. He did not want to give up control.
No kidding.
Well, Scott also auditioned for Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
As did Dick Wagner.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, yeah.
I never knew either one of those. I'll be darned.
We put out at School Kids, Scott Morgan had another band after the Sonics Rendezvous.
Right.
Called Scott's Pirates.
Mm-hmm.
And we put out 2 CDs by him.
Yeah,
Gary Rasmussen is also in it.
Right. I've got that CD, and they covered both Misery and I'm the Man by the Dynamics.
Okay.
Did the original.
I can't remember now. But.
Well, I don't want to dominate this, but sometime we have to talk about the Who plagiarizing Misery by the Dynamics.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's quite a story.
Now, should we see if you can get a hold of Scotty and bring him in here? Because you still got personal contact with him.
Yeah, they did a great version of those two songs, too. That's a good album.
I'd love to have Scott Morgan come in here and pick his brain.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
He's not in real good health, though.
Right.
That's what I heard.
He's on some GoFundMe things, and I just contributed again, so he's still not out of the woods, I guess.
Mm-hmm. He's been on Facebook a lot lately, though.
Yeah, I do see him.
He's been perking up back on there again. So,
right. Well, hopefully he's on the road to recovery. That's he's still got the great voice.
And that wraps up part 1 of our conversation with Gary Asel, covering some of Michigan's concert venues, concert halls, and clubs and dances from the late 60s to the early 70s, before and beyond. And we hope that you enjoyed that part, and we have more discussion coming up in part 2 with Gary in a couple weeks here. We want to thank Studio 163 and Alan Garcia for his hospitality and his podcast studio. And we will be back soon, so hang in there. And in the meantime, give us a thumbs up, hit a like on the Facebook page, send us some of your favorite concert memories, clubs, historical photos or videos, anything that you may have, or anything that you may have that you've forgotten about that you don't think anybody's seen. That's what we're here for. We're the Michigan Music History Podcast, the MMHP and the 989, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you for tuning in. Additionally, Dr. J can be reached at MichiganRock'n'RollLegends.com. Sir Fred can be hit up at FredRife.com. And Scott through ScottBakerMusic.com. You can also search Michigan Music History Podcast on Facebook and YouTube. You've been listening to the MMHP in the 989. From all of us at the podcast, we want to thank you for tuning in.